Hi, Viraj. How are you?
I'm
Can you
doing
hear me?
incredibly well. I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yeah, amazing. Really good to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was scrolling through your LinkedIn doing research for the show, and you are one of the investors in one of our sponsors. And so I guess I have to start there. Why did you invest in ACI.dev?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like also all of my portfolio companies at this point have been to Ventures podcast.
Yes.
I was like, I have to do it. Yeah, I mean, but you met Will, right there, one of the co-founders of ACI, and I mean, they're just exceptional founders. I don't know if you also met his co-founder Hani.
I haven't yet. He's been keeping them away from me for the time being, just shipping product.
Okay, he's gonna come next to the podcast then. But it's a fantastic team, and we backed them at pre-seed earlier this year. And at that point, to be honest, they didn't even have an idea, which obviously they do now in the product. And I met, I think, Will when he was not fundraising. We also got along quite well on a personal level. And I think he came to UK also just some time ago, but I think went through quite a lot of things in his life. Also started a company before that.
But also such a rich background, right? Like you wouldn't expect him to be building dev tools with the sort of academic background that he has as well.
Yeah, exactly. But then obviously, I think he has both academic background, but also I think he's doing a lot of actual technical things for his whole life, right? And he also spent a couple of years at McKinsey Quantum Black, so also has this a bit more commercial understanding, together with his technical skills.
He's a triple threat in all ways.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, it is quite rare, I think, that we meet people that are that well-rounded in terms of coming in both from technical and also commercial point of view. And yeah, I mean, I feel like for us, it was also a match from first sight almost in terms of the type of founders that I'm personally also looking out for.
What do you look for at founders at a pre-seed level? Like, we get a lot of investors on the show, and I ask them very similar questions because everyone does it differently, right? For you, what is the experience that you've picked up and like these small nuances around what to look for? What do you like? Personalities you get with? Can you boil it down to a specific amount of characteristics?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone obviously has their own opinions, right, about what type of founders you're looking for. I mean, to me, it's the qualities that I can also personally relate to a bit more. And I know every investor probably with whom you spoke mentions ambition, but I do think this, relentless ambition to succeed in life is really important. And you can clearly see it in all of the exceptional founders that you speak to. So I think ambition to succeed would be one. And usually these people also go through a bit more difficult moments in their lives, right? And it doesn't have to be obviously crazy like childhood trauma or something. Some people just move countries at a very young age, like learn a new language, things like that. But I think the best founders that I have met and I'm meeting, they have to go through something unexpected in their lives at some point. So that's why I also think that getting to know the founders on a bit more personal level, it's super important at pre-seed investing, just to understand this internal motivation and drive to succeed. The second one to me is, I think, optimism, actually, but not just like a bit maybe crazy naive optimism that you can do anything if you set your mind to it. And I think maybe Will, obviously from ACI, who you met, he has that as well. Where a lot of things, I think a lot of people, you wake up one morning and you want to do something, but you can also tell yourself, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't know how to start. But I think the best people, even if maybe they're not very secure in themselves, but they would do everything believing that, if you put enough effort into something, like you will succeed in it.
What did you see in Luke and Architect?
Both of these, for sure. I mean, Luke, and you spoke to him as well on a podcast, right? He started, he never had like a formal education, actually, apart high school. And then he self-taught himself 100%, right, to code. And then he was one of the youngest engineers to join his previous company when he was only 19 years old. he was the youngest team manager as well at his company. And when we were doing also references before investing like in a company, I think people at all the previous places where he worked at were just very impressed as well by how driven he was at that young age, and that's why they also trusted him and so much, like responsibility to manage teams of people who were way older than him, like back then. But also optimism for sure, and I think that's that you can probably see from the first conversation with Luke. I think he believes that he can do anything.
I want
Like
to ask, I feel like investing sometimes is a little bit of gut feeling, obviously backed by data, especially at pre-seed level, right? You can do the due diligence on the people, you can do due diligence on the company, but you're investing in that team at an early stage to go on a run and build a product and consistently find product market fit and talk to customers and grow this thing and scale this company. But both Will and Luke, did you have the gut feeling that they were the right teams to invest in and go on that journey with them? Or did the data tip you over the edge of like, okay, right, actually now I'm going to make the decision? Or did you know when you walked into the room, you were like, yeah, we're investing?
Yeah, I think gut feeling matters a lot, obviously, right? But at the end of the day, you do need to spend time with teams. You do need to meet them in person, right? And obviously, it depends on how the round also shapes up. But ideally, you do spend quite a lot of time in person to really get to know them. And we also, even at pre-seed, we do quite a bit of due diligence on the founders, right, with people who know them from whatever they did in the past. So obviously, there is gut feeling. But I wouldn't invest also just on gut feeling. I think it's important to still do your, DD and references, even at pre-seed, right?
Is that sort of why you do the hackathons with Zoe and AI Engine Room and bring those to life? Because you can get in the room at a very early stage, understand what these people are like, what their characteristics are like, but then also what thematics they enjoy building in, as an example.
Yeah, one of the reasons, 100%. I think there is also a difference between, right, when you meet a team that already practiced the pitching to VCs versus if you meet people before they even start ideating. And I do feel like that you can, first of all, also build a better relationship, but also get to know people better before they even, start like fundraising. With hackathons and other events that we hosted, what I realized is that a lot of people just don't really, they don't live in the startup or VC bubble that I think we're in. And sometimes you just join a company of great operator, but you don't really have that many touch points with the whole like crazy pre-seed ecosystem. And participating in these hackathons or going to these events has been the first touch point, like with this specific ecosystem, and almost like a push to explore something further, which just has been great. And I think I met a lot of really great people who came out from hackathons and events, but to whom they just helped to also meet people who have the same level of ambitions, to like see what other people are doing in the ecosystem.
Do you see it as almost your pipeline, and you building your pipeline of potential investments? Or is that just a byproduct?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I definitely met people through these events in whom I would invest. Obviously, sometimes there is also a lag, right, between participating in a hackathon versus building a company. That's why it depends also on the type of event that you're doing. For example, the hackathons that we hosted, it was a mix of participants. The one that we ran in Berlin 2 weeks ago with Zoe and AI Engine, Zoe from Dawn, with her initiative AI Engine. In our Project A offices, that hackathon was around generative AI media, and we gathered together sort of 55 hackers. We had speakers from the Black Forest Labs, Morello, OpenAI, Vercel, and it was a full day hackathon, just 8 hours, like pure building. Some participants were students, obviously, who are building like projects, but there is still a gap between building a project at a hackathon to starting a company. But some of the participants were already founders, for example, or who were about to become founders. and they use hackathon to maybe build the first products or build a new feature to the product that they already have, and sort of to test it in front of a live audience. And I received good feedback from those people as well, that it was really helpful to sort of test how the audience perceives maybe something new that they're building. And one team actually implemented the feature that they built during the hackathon into their current product.
Get out of here, just whilst at the hack.
Yeah, I mean, they spent 8 hours, at the desk just building it, and then said that, okay, I think we're just going to implement it into our core product for the next weeks. So
Project A Project A is one of my favorite investors in Europe, primarily because of not the fact you're a generalist fund, but you have these really interesting investments that you've made, right? Just across the board. I'd love to understand from your POV, how do you look at the early stage landscape in Europe right now?
Yeah, I mean, so Project A, we invest mainly at pre-seed and seed, right? So really, I think the teams that we meet, it's as early as it gets. In terms of the areas we focus on, so we have specialized teams, right? And we invest, for example, into fintech, logistics, like defense, and AI and dev tooling. So I have a colleague we also had on the show doing just defense, right? And so we feel like, for example, a big part of the pipeline today in European venture, and there's a big cycle of sort of defense and resilience related investments. And I focus a bit more on vertical AI and infrastructure. And here, I think it's no surprise that there's also been quite of a cycle for the last couple of years.
Tell me more.
Right, but I think it depends also on your fund strategy, right? So the tickets we come in with are typically 1 to 8 million, right? So majority of investments that we do these days are at pre-seed, and we wouldn't invest, for example, in a $100 million sort of dollar round size, which you do see a lot these days. And there's still a lot of companies that are raising like a lot of money, right, pre-revenue, but based on a very good like founder track record.
Do you think that founders are chasing valuations rather than focusing on product?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone always tries to optimize for valuation, right? And I think it is, if you are an actor in this ecosystem, like it's a normal thing to do. But it's true that I think there are some ecosystems from where we consistently see founders who know that they can raise at a certain valuation point, like a certain amount of money, because there's also a lot of precedence, right? People coming out of the same companies, doing that historically. And I feel like, because right now it's also so public, right? You see these announcements of like crazy rounds every day, like on X or like LinkedIn. And you feel like, I mean, if they can do it, I can also do it. And to be honest, if you come out of a great company with great track record, like today you probably can, right?
Where do you think the value add for a venture capitalist is today, or a VC firm is today? Because I've been noticing on X as an example, and on LinkedIn, just across the board in comms, like founders will announce the round, and then at a later date add that the round was led by XYZ ABC. It's not all in the same post. It's like we raised this, and then the next is from ABC XYZ. Do you think that the power is more in the founder's hands and the company's hands than in the venture capitalist hands today?
Today, the power is definitely more in founders' hands than in VC hands. I mean, I think, again, I wasn't in venture, right, 10 years ago, but also by speaking to people who were, was very different times where there was less VC funds, right? But a lot of, I think, companies that wanted to raise money from very specific VC funds. Whereas today you have an abundance of VC funds, and there's way more competition today, I think, in the VC ecosystem, and everyone is trying to chase pretty much the same like companies or like founder type.
And almost like this fixed pool of capital that exists.
Well, yeah, I think the pool of capital is also growing, obviously, right? So that's the.
We hope it's growing. What do you want founders to know about venture and investors that they typically don't know?
Yeah, I think especially as a first-time founder, and I do see it quite a lot, I think you need to be clear also what you want to optimize for, but also especially at pre-seed stage, right? If it's a brand of a fund, that's absolutely fine as well. But most of the times, I think it is about the relationship also that you build with the pre-seed fund and the investors who back you. That would actually be more helpful to take you to the next stage. But I think it depends what you optimize for, to be honest. But it's important to do references on VC funds. I think that's
important
one.
to do references on VC funds, on investors.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, I mean, first-time founder, not first-time founder, but I think it's good to do references on VC funds, and VC founders do it, right, typically. So it should go both ways, right?
How would your founders describe you?
I mean, hopefully, and in all of the other references that I was asked, I mean, usually very helpful. And I think that's the biggest value add that we try to give at Project A, because if you invest at pre-seed, typically you can help either with hires or take you into the next stage. Also in terms of fundraising, I mean, for one portfolio company, also help them to create like an influencer marketing campaign a little bit for the product launch. But I think to me, I always just try to ask if you need help with anything, and then whatever I can do, right? Versus steering the company into one direction or another. Because I think that founders always know better than VCs, to be honest. So that's also have full trust in like founders that I back.
You mentioned earlier your sort of thematic that you like spending time in is vertical AI. What are you seeing in that particular space that you think you know a secret in?
I mean, if I knew a secret, probably would have already went back to unicorn and vertical AI.
What do you believe to be true that others don't?
Yeah, I think something that is interesting right now, and I think it goes back to your previous question about like the state of the venture in general right now, is that back in the days there was also a wave of SaaS, right? And there was a lot of companies funded that grew to 20 to 30 million ARR, but then kind of the growth stalled. And I think now you see a lot of vertical companies growing into revenues quite fast. But I think it's still TBD if the cycle will repeat itself, in a sense that probably a couple of these companies, will stay within or might plateau at the end of the day. But that's also the vertical companies that I spend time on. I think I like two main categories today. One is either they replace proper human labor, because I think that's where also with a couple of investments that we've done, we've seen that it's a bit more sustainable versus building just another tool that might get acquired by another tool sort of in a couple of years. And the second one is having a bit more diversified business model beyond just SaaS. So one company that actually Angel invested in, I can't name them now, unfortunately, but they're based in San Francisco, and they are almost rebuilding like AI native McKinsey. And they automated majority of the backend processes. So they run at like 90% gross margins right now. So very software-like business in terms of unit economics. But you see the value that they deliver is end-to-end replacing what like humans would typically do in terms of due diligence reports for the end client. And the business is also quite profitable. So I think these kind of companies, even if AI bubble bursts, some businesses plateau, I think these kind of companies will probably sustain for the long time.
Do you really think they're going to sustain for a long period of time? Or do you think that the incumbents will find a way to either buy them, acquire them, acqui-hire them, or build their own tooling that does the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it depends at which point you get acquired as well, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. I mean, incumbents, I never underestimate them, right? You can build anything you want probably today with the
I
tooling that you
think
have.
Google was the best example, right? Everyone a year ago, myself included, was thinking like, "Whoa, they're out of the race," and then they dropped Gemini 3, and you look at the suite of products, and you think, well, they're right back in the game.
Yeah, I mean, and we see the same with I think companies that tried also to replace like Deal or Rippling. These companies always find a way, but I think I'm talking now a bit more about less about the software increments, but more about very heavy services businesses, where just the business model is a bit different in terms of like margins that you also run on, and they operate in like insane markets, right? Where I think you don't have one company that has a monopoly over like a trillion size, like specific services market, right? So that's why I think there will be a lot of big companies coming out across different professional services industries, right? I mean, not just like McKinsey/consulting, but the challenge will be probably building also brand and differentiation out of it, right? Because I think there you also see quite a lot of like AI services to businesses like coming out for the last couple of years. But it's a space that we're spending quite a bit of time on at the moment.
I can imagine. Look, before we let you go, one of the things I love to ask guests on the show is who their favorite founders who their favorite founders are. In your case, who are your favorite investors? 4 people, who's on the Mount Rushmore?
Our favorite investors, well, apart Project A colleagues.
I know you can plug Project A colleagues if you like.
Okay, but then I'll start with Jack at Project A, who is a partner while leading our.
Jack is incredible, like absolutely insane. I love talking to Jack.
Yeah. And we do a lot of AI infrastructure topics with him as well together. But yeah, he's great. And I think he's also a great mentor to a lot of younger people in the ecosystem who just start in VC.
What does he tell you? Like, what are some of the learnings and nuances you picked up from Jack?
Yeah, I think he's very realistic about VC cycles and bubbles.
Deeply pragmatic, right?
Yeah, exactly. So very pragmatic about these kind of things. So I think whenever we spend time on companies, he's always the sort of bit more pragmatic voice as well, right? Where, this is just AI bubble, it's going to burst. That's not going to happen. But so I think it's been good to have his voice of reason as well in the team. And then I think the second one was actually Zoe from Dawn Capital. Obviously, we organized an event together with her as well. But she was one of the first people that I met in the VC ecosystem when I joined. I think she's very smart, also incredibly ambitious, and she's very helpful to all the founders.
I was with Zoe yesterday at the AI Engine Room event demo day, and one of the things I think, when someone describes Zoe, I'm like, I think you're missing a trick here. Zoe operates on a completely different bandwidth to the rest of us. Like, she's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but she can just take everything into context. She also makes some insane bets as well, right? In terms of her portfolio at Dawn, or the portfolio that she's worked on at Dawn. So I have huge admiration for Zoe.
Yeah. I mean, she's running events, which is a full-time job on the side of it.
I'm like, let's not get it twisted. It helps for the entire ecosystem.
Well, yeah, exactly, right. And it also fits back into your full-time job.
Well,
so
maybe not Dawn at early stage, but it sort of helps out the friends of the venture ecosystem as well. And when they get big enough, they could go write their $5 million checks.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got Jack, we got Zoe. Who else is on the list?
I respect a lot Shri at Lakestar.
I haven't had the pleasure. I haven't met him. I've met Enrico briefly. Enrico's pretty cool, but tell me more about Shri.
I mean, Shri's great because he's also he's quite technical as well. So I think we brainstorm quite a bit together on the topics we invest in. But he's very, very smart and very sharp. Also done really good investments for the fund. And generally has a very deep, I think, understanding of the product and tech beyond like all of the rest, which is also, I think, a big value add for any fund, to be honest. But he's also been a long time sort of ecosystem friend, but he's great. You should invite him next to the show.
I most definitely will. Don't worry, I'll be reaching out for an intro.
Yeah. Sure.
Last one on the Mount Rushmore for you.
I really can't think of a last one.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really difficult because when you say favorite, obviously it's the ones with whom you have probably also a bit of a relationship with, right? Yeah.
Or who have you looked at in the past? Who have you read about? Who do you take inspiration from in terms of their investments? It's Mount Rushmore. It's greatest of all time. It's whoever you want it to be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of impressive people in the venture ecosystem.
Do you know who I would say? I would say Daria in 15 years' time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
when she's got like 3 or 4 fund returners and she's ready to raise her own fund, she's like, "Yep, we're going for it."
But still, you can only judge the performance really of a VC investor in 10 years, and I think
it's true. It's weird how when you're raising from LPs, they are not betting on your future; they're betting on your track record.
Yeah, exactly right, and which is usually a short term, at least for now, right? Yeah.
Do you think you'll stay in venture for a considerable period of time, or do you think at some point you're going to call it a day, or do you deeply enjoy the craft?
I really love venture, to say, but I think also I'm quite early on, right, in the career, so it's hard to say where you will be in 10 years, I think. But venture is a great place to be. I mean, the amount of people you meet is insane. I don't think you get to meet that amount of really smart, ambitious, and interesting people in any other job, to be honest.
I couldn't agree more.
It does feel like a privilege pretty much every single day, right?
That's literally how I describe it. I also, the sort of other side of this is like everything feels like science fiction right now, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why it's good to sometimes get out of the bubble as well.
I'll live in the bubble. I'm very happy here. Last question before we let you go. Who in the portfolio, within where you spend time, do you think I have to speak to?
In Project A portfolio?
Well, specifically ones Daria's worked on or worked with.
Yeah, like the only one that you haven't spoken with probably is Rematic, because you met Architect and ACI. Yeah, you should definitely speak to Rematic. They're also a great team, but building in a very complex industry. They focus on compliance for large medtechs and life sciences companies. Mm-hmm. So also, yeah, I mean, but I will leave it to you probably to chat to them, to be honest about it. It's yeah, I mean, but it's very impressive. Also the customers that they got on board, because the industry is so complex, but you already see the C-level there adopting sort of AI for their R&D engineers, which we've never seen, like a couple of years ago. So just a very, very interesting business, but also very different from, I think, a lot of other companies that probably you would meet. So I will leave the intrigue and the surprise to you.
Don't worry, I'll be calling you for the D&D. Don't sweat. Daria, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully speak to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Cool. See you soon. Ciao, ciao. Daria.